really appreciate you setting aside some time. I know we've connected briefly through, I think, some like kind of mutual connections and kind of folks in FamTech. And I think that's how I originally came across Soaring Families and your business and your profile. And so that's probably just the best place to start is for you to kind of just give the quick overview of what your company does and what you're building and who you're building for.
Okay, happy to be here. Thanks, Dan. So Soaring Families started about 10 years ago, and it was more of I guess, a vision or a dream of helping other families, other family caregivers, really manage through the whole care journey. And it's evolved a fair bit over those last 10 years. It's gone from a side gig of mine to now full-time focus on really making this valuable for families and for others. And, a lot of what we're trying to do is not just direct one-on-one, but also work with other organizations and other partners because we each kind of have a piece of the care economy, a piece of the care, expertise. We have to combine forces to really make a difference. So it's kind of all of that. But in general, what we would say is that our vision is to help families rewrite their caregiving story from one of that's full of overwhelm and stress and pain to one that's, I guess, more around joy and resilience and fulfillment because it can be that as well. And so how do you get there? How do you experience those things is where our focus is. And there are a couple of ways that we look at it from from a business point of view and from a personal point of view is that, well, we've been family caregivers ourselves, my wife and I, for over 3 decades for our son. He requires 24-hour care, but he's also a university graduate. And the way all of that sort of has unfolded is realizing that you can't do the care and the support all on your own. You can't be their hands and feet every single day, 24 hours a day. You have to build a team around you. And that's what we do at Soaring Families, is show families how to find the right people to build that team, whatever that looks like for their circumstances, and really start to experience more than just the hands-on day-to-day stuff. So that's kind of our bread and butter. That's what we try to show families how to do. Some of them are ready for that. Some of them aren't. Actually, a lot aren't. It's a big decision point that you have to try to bring, try to bring somebody into your home or your parents' home, whatever the situation is. But nevertheless, we try to meet families where they are, help to coach them and move them along that journey until they're ready for that step to really start building that team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to get into a lot of the specifics around, the work that you guys are doing, how you're partnering, with other companies and helping families and caregivers. But just kind of going, I guess, back in your story a little bit, like you mentioned, you've been a caregiver for around 30 years for your son. And I have watched the video on your website that is just a great, just sort of bit of emotional kind of storytelling of your background and your family's background and some of the ways that you guys have dealt with those challenges and sort of thrived. And so you've been doing that for a long time. The business, however, I think you said is you've been kind of working at it for around 10 years. So kind of take me back in your story a little bit around maybe the years where, you were obviously, caring for your son and raising him and working with him as he got older and got an education. Professionally, like at that same time, what were you doing? What was some of the work that you were doing? What kind of, like, did you always have sort of an entrepreneurial kind of spirit? Did you think caregiving was going to be part of that? Take me through just kind of what you were doing back in those earlier years.
Sure, great question. So I guess the entrepreneurial spirit has probably always been there. I have been in IT for all, those 3 decades as well, mostly as a consultant, mostly either working for myself or working with another consulting firm. And in early days, that's what I focused on. It wasn't about, I didn't have a vision or an idea of what Soaring Families would be. It was really just surviving, keeping the lights on. You know, we had two other kids, and it was a lot just to balance everything. But at one point, it kind of came to me that my son Ben, he has complex care needs, and what we wanted to look for in early days was, I want to talk to another family that has the same experiences. Like, what did they do,
Hmm.
and learn from them. Well, um, you know, 25 years ago, it was hard to do. You didn't have, high-speed internet or Facebook or anything like that. So finding people was a challenge. Although we did run into a couple of families, kind of through acquaintances, and kind of learned from that. But that that prompted me to say, if we had had a manual or a book about what it was like to raise a child with complex care needs, or even a single disability, not just as complex as Ben is, that would have been gold for us. And so that prompted me into, well, I'm going to write a book about it. I'm just going to tell people about what it was like in early days of to be immersed in that environment of overwhelm and stress, but also things that were, there was light too in some of those years. And so that's what I did. I had no idea how to write a book, but I started writing. I had kept detailed logs of his, um, well, basically daily logs of what was going on in his life, more to kind of keep track of things because things kept shifting. There was a lot of detail, things you couldn't remember all on your own. And I took all those detailed logs of it was kind of like a diary, but
Hmm.
more detailed than that, and turned those pages into kind of the story of raising Ben. And it took a long time to kind of put it together. Um, it was something that I, I looked to people to try and help me do it, and I actually found a coworker of mine who helped me sort of tear apart my original story and pull it together in a more meaningful fashion. And probably 5 years later, from the time I started writing to the time I self-published,
Hmm.
it was a lot of you know um, energy to do that. So the book was published in 2012, and I thought, okay, that's really interesting. There was sort of a bump in people wanted to know about it, and then I knew nothing about the book publishing business, and the kind of thing is that if you don't really have a main publisher behind you, it becomes pretty difficult for you to kind of earn any money at that. And that really wasn't the goal. It was more to get it out there to say,
Hmm.
you're a published author. But then from there, it led to, okay, there's got to be something more than just a book to help people. And that kind of led into, okay, what else could we do to support families? And that began sort of this quest of what Soaring Families was and where
Hmm.
it is today.
Yeah. So writing a book, I think today, and even not that long ago, probably when you were writing it, a little bit different, and getting it out there is different. And like you said, you were not writing the book necessarily to be cashing all these checks and have it be this lucrative thing. But I'm guessing you were writing it to, even if it got in the hands of just a handful of the right families and it helped them, like I'm guessing that kind of made it worth it. Did you have, like, what kind of feedback were you getting when people kind of came across the book? And was any of that feedback what kind of led you to go, okay, maybe kind of beyond the book, there's something else here to explore?
Well, yeah, good question. I guess the feedback was, um, by and large, very positive, and people had. I tried to write it in the way that it would immerse you into what it was like to live this life. So it was very raw in some areas, and talked a lot about personal feelings and things like that. And what people got back to me is people who were caregivers thought that that's exactly what they go through. So it really resonated with them. And others would have looked at it and said, I had no idea, Mike, that this is what your life was like. And kind of, not in awe, but really surprised and had really no understanding of all the things you have to deal with. And it wasn't just you deal with it for a few days and then you're done with it. This was, round the clock and dealing with it every day. So it really was, I guess, validation that I don't know if it was worth the time, the 5 years to write it, but nevertheless, it was a learning exercise for me. And I know I got it out into a few people that it probably made a difference in their life in some small way. And
Hmm.
that's really what the intent of it was.
Yeah. And not to get uh, too sort of heady here, but like, was it like kind of therapeutic as well? I mean, for you, just kind of writing it and sort of documenting stuff, or because I'm guessing, like you talked about, sort of the kind of raw and emotional like aspect of it, very hard to live through and kind of work through some of that stuff. And I'm guessing maybe a little emotional too, probably writing it as well. I would assume, but maybe not. I don't know.
No, it definitely was. I mean, that was part of what I kind of wanted to do, that it wasn't just a sort of chronology of things. It
Yeah.
was, I wanted you to kind of feel as exhausted as I was after reading chapter 10 or whatever it
Yeah.
was, right? And it was the kind of thing that um, it kind of brought, fortunately, I had written in a lot of detail at the time. So I wrote this probably 10 years after the time period that I was sort of writing the story about. And
Hmm.
there's no way I could remember everything I felt after those 10 years. But because I had written it down in detail, because that's what it felt like the right thing to do at the time,
Hmm.
I could sort of relive some of those things. And some of them I didn't put in because they were too difficult to put in. Others were, enough of a kind of a crisis moment that I tried to make it so to reveal the types of people that were around us, sort of our character and those sorts of things. And, to be quite honest, initially my wife wasn't keen on sort of telling the world all about our private lives.
Hmm.
Um, and we kept it to a point that it didn't expose too many things.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you had to have enough in there to really make it impactful on people.
Yeah. And you talked about this a little bit already. Just this idea of being a caregiver, and you cannot be every single thing to the person that you're caring for. You have to have a team and sort of surround yourself with, different people playing different roles and kind of coming together, and really that sense of kind of community, I guess. Is
Mhm.
that was a lot of that stuff? I'm guessing a lot of that is kind of what you're writing about in the book, and is that kind of when you talked about the transition of, okay, maybe there's something more beyond the book? Is that what you were mostly exploring? How to talk about that? How to help people figure out how to build that support kind of network? Because it's probably different for everybody, right?
It is. I would say not really from sort of the transition from the book.
Hmm.
The book was, I guess, a snapshot of 5 years of living this life.
Yeah.
And but out of that, sort of the messaging of it was that, we had lasted 5 years and things were still okay. We had a lot of scars to show, but it was a bit of a realization that it wasn't 5 years of hell. That there were other bright parts in the story, and that's what kind of and the way that those were kind of brought to light were, that we had others in our life that seemed to come at the right time. We had
Hmm.
a lot of good care providers and medical providers, that were there. They While they couldn't fix things necessarily, they were there to help us get through it. And that probably led in some ways to, you need to find that circle around you that we would call your champions, that are there to build you up and support you wherever you need to be.
Hmm.
And from there led to, what Soaring Families sort of wanted to focus on, to show that there is light in the journey as well, and that you need others to help you on the dark days.
Yeah. And so, in terms of the kind of the chronology, what kind of happened next? Because all the while you're still juggling caregiving, life, work, all of the above. So at what point did what ultimately Soaring Families is today,
Hmm.
the sort of the origin of that, what did that look like?
Well, it was getting some advice on how do I make this, a real business.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I guess they'd only really started of how do you incorporate? What do you need to do?
Yeah.
What are kind of what's the legal side of it on what it really means? And once you start down that path, there are certain regular obligations you have to live up to. You don't have to make money every year, but at least there are some, legal things and contractual things you have to make sure they're
Mm-hmm.
in place. Um, and that got me looking at, okay, how can I monetize this? What's the fastest way to do that? Um, and I didn't really have a good answer for that. There wasn't really any fast way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And realized that if I'm going to do it, it's going to have to be, I guess, for all intents and purposes, bootstrapped. Like I don't have any capital to do it. I don't have any funders that want to sort of help to build this business.
Mm-hmm.
And what that led to was, okay, what can I do on my own time for a minimum amount of cost every month to keep it going? And so the first thing was, well, I need a web presence, and so building the website was one of them. It helped that I was been in IT for a number of years, so that tech side didn't really wasn't a barrier. It was time consuming, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a barrier. And then, okay, what am I going to offer people as kind of a start? And that's where we began sort of um, I guess, the first versions of what we call now the Caregiver Support Formula, which is the training program to help you build that team around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where it all started. It was an online training. You do it at your own pace. And basically, it was the formula that we followed in our lives to build the team around us. Then we were, pretty successful at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you explore? Well, I'm sure you did all of the different kind of paths that maybe you could have taken at the very beginning, because it could. I could sort of see a lot of different solutions and ways that you could help families and caregivers. It could be an online course. It could be consulting. It could be some type of a digital platform. It could be, something that would go through like insurance benefits. I'm guessing you probably could have gone a lot of different ways with it. How many of those did you kind of seriously consider, or did you kind of find your path pretty quickly?
Well, it was the biggest constraint was time, and it was um, I had thought about some of those paths, but the quickest way for me that I could have control over it, because I didn't know how much time I could, you know, allocate to it on a weekly basis, because
Right.
every week was different, every day was different, every week was different with all the other obligations and priorities. And it was basically, what could I control, what could I deliver after X number of weeks or months. And that's where it became the online training, because I
Mm-hmm.
could build the modules. I knew what we had to do
Yeah.
to build this team. So that seemed like the simplest, less stressful way of doing it. I didn't have a firm launch date to have it available. I had a target, which didn't work out, but it was just because there was so many other things going on.
Yeah. And that kind of version one of the training program, at least at the time, what was kind of the elevator pitch of what it was, and exactly kind of how it worked and how people would engage with it? Because I'm sure it's probably changed a little bit over time.
It has, yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious, what was that sort of entry point when you started kind of getting it in front of people?
It was more of, how do you create a I guess a better home care experience, and that you have this situation with your child or your spouse or your aging parent, and showing them that having others around them, to the goal is to make it as fulfilling for your family member as possible, and this is one of the big ways that you can do it. That was the initial sort of pitch to people, versus we'll show you how to hire people. right?
Hmm.
I mean, those are the features of the program, but that's not really the benefit of it, other than you obviously have to find good people to do that.
Hmm.
And it was I guess a less comprehensive training program than what it is now. And the price point at that time was, I had no idea how to price it, and wanted it to sort of demonstrate value, but also not be a barrier for people as well.
Yeah. And at the time when you were kind of ready to launch it, I'm guessing you probably had a pretty good network of folks that you've just sort of learned from through the years and connected with, and I'm sure there's probably uh, groups where you could sort of get in front of people and talk about what you were building. Was it difficult to do that, or was it pretty easy just to get that first small wave of people using it, just to get that feedback, that gold, right? That early feedback. Was that easier, or was that a struggle?
It was a struggle. That It's the kind of thing that people didn't. It was a kind of a personal thing that if you had to bring someone in, you made that decision. And at the time, I didn't see it that way because, of course, we'd been living it for years.
Hmm.
So attracting the right people who were ready, I didn't quite understand how to do that. And I thought everyone should be able to do this. It's
Hmm.
easy, right? Because we figured it out for you. But it was far more nuanced and complicated than that for people to actually get to there. So initial days, there wasn't a whole lot of, I didn't have a marketing budget to go blast social media and tell
Yeah.
people about it. Um, but what did happen a bit of an inflection point, was when the film you referenced earlier came out, which was in 2017. That gave a big bump and exposure to, you know, what we're doing, what Ben's life is, and oh, there's this thing called Soaring Families. So that, I think that started it in a good way to get more exposure.
Hmm. Yeah. And what was kind of the story behind the video? How did that like kind of come together? Because I noticed at the end it was a lot of different sort of groups and companies sort of coming together to, I would imagine, probably put together that kind of content and tell some of those stories. But like, what was kind of the story behind it?
So I sat on a volunteer board. I continue to sit on it. It's called the Community Living Board in Fundy Region, and it started in I guess probably the late 50s here in this part of the world, focused on persons with an intellectual disability, and how at the time they were excluded from society, and they were institutionalized and all kinds of horrible things. And out of that, it has since evolved quite a bit, but it has led to the focus of the board is to promote inclusive communities. And so it doesn't matter what your disability or your challenge is. We need to build a community that supports you to do whatever you need to do or what you want to do. And always assume that people have a voice, and that they want to live lives like everyone else who maybe not doesn't have a disability. And that led to my drive, I guess, to focus on inclusion, because I really had no idea what it was until Ben came along. And that's how he graduated from university, right? Having the community around you and having those funding and government policy and things that kind of laid the groundwork for you to do that. But the board itself they saw the story as something that was needed to be told. And we organized the funding. It was done by a professional, a film company here locally. The film was produced that way, and it was fairly expensive. And so we got other factors and other people involved to try and be part of this project, that took probably 6 months to do. And people just bought into the message. They wanted to help in whatever way they can. And it really was trying to tell a broader story that that there is power in inclusion and in power in an inclusive community, and look what can happen. I mean, Ben, who can't walk or talk, and requires 24/7 care, he graduated from university. How'd that happen, right? And it was about, obviously he had to do the work, but if you put the right supports around you, right, the right environment around you, then pretty crazy things can happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was obviously the video was very well done and a powerful kind of piece of storytelling and tied to obviously what you guys are doing. And so I guess I'm not surprised that kind of putting that out there helped at least get on people's radar a little bit.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I think that's what you mentioned, is that there was a little bit of a boost from that. Same question I asked kind of about the book is, even though again we're not talking giant numbers in terms of engagement and people using the training program, but from the people that were using it in the early days, like what was some of the feedback you got, what some of that was useful, things that maybe you didn't expect that you were hearing during those days?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome in the sense that I knew it worked for us, and I believed it could work for other people, but until you really try that, you don't really know.
Yeah.
Um, and when the feedback that was coming in, that even sort of small pieces of the formula, a few steps that people hadn't thought of to do, they saw, wow, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Like, it's very easy to implement, and they got so much value out of it, and they were successful. They found people around them. They found that they had that they could do this themselves, and it was a bit of a confidence booster for the families, that now they had something they could fall back on and rely on, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. I mean, our goal all along is to empower the families, not for them to be dependent on us, but to give them the skills they can grow from. But we're always here to help them through different situations. But they basically do most of the work, and that was our goal, was to help them do that.
Yeah. Um, and around what time was this happening? What kind of when you launched? What year was it?
So it would have been 2017, I guess, the very first version of the Caregiver Support Formula came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that obviously over the years, the 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 product has changed, and how you guys deliver value has changed a little bit. Tell me about maybe when some of that was happening. What was kind of the path that, in hindsight, people probably go, oh, yeah, it was a straight path, but I'm sure it didn't feel like that at the time, right?
No, and it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
In 2017, then trying to promote it through Facebook and other channels, and connecting with other, like-minded parents and families, was time consuming. As I say, this was my side gig, and a lot of other things on the go. And it was, we probably had, we grew our mailing list to, a few hundred, which wasn't a lot, but it was very sort of loyal and consistent people that wanted to be part of it. And some of those people needed to learn the formula, so they purchased it and they went through it. And then COVID hit. And
Hmm.
so it kind of changed a whole lot. But it changed in one way, of that people, they were in survival mode because they didn't know what was going on in the world. But on the other hand, it highlighted and it shone a light on just how many problems there are in the whole home care and long-term care industries. And there has been a shift in terms of where people focus on and what they see as important. And one of the downsides, unfortunately, though, is that a lot of people in the care industry, caregivers, medical professionals, they left the field because it was such a horrible time to be in that industry, and so stressful and all of that. So finding, applying our formula to try to find people, well, the resource pool's thinned out quite a bit. So is it really going to work? And now what do we do? And we kind of shifted and thought, well, maybe we can help people go through the formula themselves. So we started to deliver it as a group coaching program. So rather than you do it all on your own, and some people I know started and never finished because life happens, you commit to 6 weeks, one session per week, actually a couple of weeks at two, for an hour, and we'll take you through it. We'll take you by the hand, we'll answer all your questions, just to kind of make it worthwhile, so that at the end of that 6 weeks you're off to the races. And so we ran a couple of cohorts through that in 2022 and 2023, and that was very fulfilling for us, because we saw how people transformed, right before our eyes almost. They came into the program with all kinds of stress and problems. They left the program with the same problems, but now they had a different outlook and the confidence that, what, I think I can probably solve some of these myself. And that was why we did it, is because we want them to feel that and experience that transformation. As I said before, the trying to find the people at the right time when they're ready to bring somebody in has been a challenge and continues to be a challenge. And so we pivoted from the group coaching format into something far simpler. Not to say that we won't do group coaching again. If people are ready, we're all for it. We're ready to go. But we wanted to find more people earlier in the journey before they needed to maybe bring somebody in or knew they had to. And so we took one of the frameworks that we built for the formula, called the Pink Book, and now we're trying to promote that in terms of, this is an easy first step for you to get into organizing and simplifying your caregiving life, and follow this framework. It can become your companion on how do you manage and organize all the information that you need to organize around meds and nutrition and care routines and things. Follow this framework, get your life in order, and then you can see the results of, just by this one framework, how it's going to help you. And then maybe from there you can then say, oh, now I can breathe. You're right, maybe I can find someone, maybe I can offload this part of the day to somebody else, and I don't have to do it all. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. So the idea with the Pink Book is creating something which sort of gives you a way of starting conversations with people a little bit earlier in their journey, where previously they might just be like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. That's maybe a little bit more intense than what I'm looking for, or maybe I don't even know what I'm looking for, because I talk about this all the time
Exactly.
with companies, that there's any company of any kind, there's always this sort of element of kind of education and sort of creating a connection with people. And okay, they might have a problem that they're looking to solve, but there might be a bunch of them that don't really know that they have the problem yet, or maybe they have the problem but they're not feeling the pain yet. And so it's sort of education about that just gets them thinking, gets them open, and then later on you have solutions that you can sort of provide to them.
Yes.
So that was kind of the idea, reaching people earlier. Did you have a little bit more success as you kind of went out kind of more broadly and just sort of tried to reach a bunch of people with that type of, just that product, but then also the content and the messaging and the marketing of just sort of trying to get on people's radar? Was it a little bit easier?
Absolutely, it was. Yeah. It was a much lower lift, and as you say, it's not as intense, and it's something, the framework. It actually, the way it's delivered now is that it's meant to be a paper-based system. So the framework helps you go through and populate templates around care. We call it a care framework, and it's meant for you to build your own Pink Book. So things around what meds are important, what preferences of your family member are important. You put that specific into your Pink Book, and then as care is delivered, it becomes more consistent because you've written it down. It's not just in your head. And it's something that people can start with, in today. Like there's no a lot of prep work. it's very easy for you to start to unload all that information out of your head into this framework. And now you've got a system, whether you realize it or not, that's going to make care that much easier for you every day. And so we've had a fair bit of success right now in getting the exposure and getting people to buy in. We've had some organizations even sponsor other families for the Pink Book, and so they've paid in advance for the Pink Book itself that we are now distributing to families at no charge to them. So they get the benefit, we get the benefit of having still the copies that are out there, and then we can start to serve even more people as they go down the journey.
Yeah. And that's actually a question I wanted to ask, even going back to the online training program and basically any iteration of the online training or the Pink Book, kind of going out and trying to find partners and partnerships and groups that there are opportunities for, co-marketing of services and solutions. Was that something that you from the beginning were exploring? Is that something you kind of explored later on? When did you do that? And then what were some of the more successful times when that kind of came together?
Well, initially it wasn't something I had thought of, but I knew that I had to make more connections regularly with people, and through those conversations and people who are in the care economy or doing something similar for families, or maybe even just B2B situations, it became obvious to me that, well, maybe I can help them augment what they deliver with the Pink Book or with the formula or whatever the expertise that we have. And it became, I guess, a drive for me to find the right people at the right time to actually deliver this. And the other thing that I guess there are a couple of things that have now become made me aware that there is a path to getting the Pink Book into as many families as possible. And one is to tailor the Pink Book to a specific diagnosis, because most families don't self-identify as being family caregivers. They, even though that's what they're doing, but they do recognize and identify with a diagnosis. So you would say, my father has Alzheimer's, or my parent has ALS, or some sort of, chronic disease or something. And if so, it's now become obvious that we need to build diagnosis-specific Pink Books frameworks for those families that they can use right out of the gate. And I formed a partnership with the ALS Society regionally here because they knew about the Pink Book. And so we've built a Pink Book for ALS care. So it's taking the starter kit that we have in general for anybody and adding adding to the framework so that it's related more to ALS care for the specific types of things that they have to deal with. And there's another, I've just started a project with another company to develop one for dementia care. So it's the kind of thing that they have their own audiences as well, their own clients or customers, however you want to label them, that could benefit from this. So we're taking the base of the Pink Book, augmenting it, and then starting to distribute directly to those families who they actually work with already.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense that, the more kind of specific you can get, probably the better. Because I'm sure you've come across this a lot with any kind of a online training or a course or even a book. And I see this too, just in general. There can be something that's like probably extremely valuable and the content's great and it's kind of exactly what you need. But without that little extra bit of specificity, it you could just lose steam and you can kind of put it aside and you can go, oh, that was helpful. But you kind of forget about it. But that extra little bit of feeling like, oh, this was made like really specifically for me.
Right.
It just probably increases the likelihood that they're just going to, really take to it and really stick with it and kind of be an evangelist too, because all those people are also forming support groups of other families that are going through the same thing. And I'm sure that like with the right tool that could kind of spread organically, I would assume.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that remains to be seen, but yes, that's obviously that it has to provide value kind of right out of the gate because the families are stressed and they don't want something extra to do.
Yeah.
And that's how we've structured the framework. That's how we structured the Pink Book to make it easy for them to build, to use, and then see the benefits that it does simplify things. That I don't have to remember all the different things that happened before. And if I have someone, a family member, anybody, to kind of come in for a couple of hours to mind the store while I'm away,
Yeah.
then now the Pink Book is their guide to understand how the care is actually delivered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of taking a step back and just kind of a generic kind of marketing question, because I'm a marketing guy. I'm a fractional CMO,
Right.
so I nerd out on all the marketing stuff. What would you say has been kind of the biggest challenge just in getting awareness and getting out there and doing marketing? And I'll take probably the obvious first answer, which is just time and
Mm-hmm.
not having the time to do it. That's a huge just aspect of going out and like getting marketing done. So like if you put that aside, like what do you find being kind of the biggest challenge?
It's, I guess, finding the right audience, right? It's to, I guess, niche your message down to the point where it finds the right people at the right time. And that then leads to, well, you if you're going to do it for free, it's going to take forever.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to pay for, ads and things like that, you can probably shorten that timeline. But even if you did, it's still there's no guarantee that that message is going to find the right person versus just kind of a scatter shot of things that are out there. So it's one of the things that I'm now gotten more into, and it is free to a point, is growing our YouTube channel, and that's a long process to do
Mm-hmm.
that. But the feedback I've gotten from the people who actually have found it is gold, and it actually gives me the motivation to keep going because
Yeah.
it is time consuming to create and edit the content and get it up there, and and try to do some posts. I'm active on LinkedIn to try and grow that network,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a slow process, but it's it's something that is helping to at least bit by bit get the message out to sort of the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said before, the partnerships and getting in front of their audiences is kind of the quickest way, I think, to get the message out to more people versus trying to do it one by one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm actually curious about your kind of the process that you went through to, first of all, just like arrive at the conclusion that, okay, YouTube's going to be a good investment of time. Because to your point, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever channel, it's going to be an investment of time. You have to have a lot of patience because it's a slow build over time to start to like see momentum and see results. And YouTube especially, or any video platform, because there's the just the time to create the
Hmm.
content. So
Yeah,
what was kind of the kernel of the idea to go kind of invest in video?
I think it's more to present Soaring Families and me in an authentic way.
Yeah.
That it's rather than just a random post or some short ad of something. It's I'm going to tell you the stories that I lived. I'm going to show you sort of the quiet struggles that we went through, and that it's actually the same struggles that the people who found the channel are going through. So it's that connection more than anything, and that to demonstrate that we understand you, we see what you're doing, and we can help you. And it's there more to drive traffic versus to try and monetize the channel or anything.
Sure.
I guess if we get 1 million subscribers, maybe that's kind of a side benefit, but that's not the intent. It's to grow it enough so it hits the right people that can find Soaring Families, and then we can start to service them from there.
Yeah. And are you, or have you been in the past, been comfortable being on camera, putting yourself out there? I mean, obviously we're on camera right now, but and I'm asking because I am like this. I think lots of people are like this. That it's just an uncomfortable new muscle to like figure out how
It's
to
true.
work out.
Yeah.
And so many people either never do it just because it is so uncomfortable and awkward, or they do it and that, but they just kind of give up on it because it takes so long for it to start to work. So I was just kind of curious, what was your sort of like going into it? Was it something you were comfortable with, or you knew that this was a necessary kind of thing to figure out? you know?
Well, I don't know if I knew if it was necessary. I kind of chose it to think it seems like a reasonable, knowing that it is a long path,
Yeah.
but it's something that it wasn't going to be too heavy of a lift. And honestly, right now, with helping, relying on ChatGPT to help me fine tune the messaging for the videos, it's like having a free assistant,
Yeah.
right? So that has expedited, I wouldn't say 10x my productivity, but it has helped a whole lot in getting more things out there more quickly. In being uncomfortable in video, the first version of the formula was video training, right? So that was cumbersome and that was frustrating to get it all kind of together because technology in 2017 was very different than what it is now. And talking to a camera and not having any feedback was the biggest thing for me, that you could just ramble. I had some scripts and things like that and teleprompters in early days to try and keep me on track. But yeah, it wasn't that I felt kind of goofy or uncomfortable. It was, you get no feedback. You're just looking at a light on a camera. And one of the training courses I took said, put a stuffed animal on top of your camera, and then you're talking to the stuffed animal, right? At least it's something.
Yeah.
And so I kind of did that. It was kind of fun. And then didn't really matter. And now talking to people, because I've been doing it for a number of years, it's not a difficult thing for me to do. And getting in front of a video and putting it out there, some days I think, I don't want people to see me like this. I don't want people to know about this. And on the other hand, the actual messaging that I can come up with is worth it. And then another sort of business coach that I had said, nobody really cares if you do this or that, but if your message resonates, don't worry about anything else. And so, like, nobody knows about you. Nobody cares if you screwed up on something, right? You want to be authentic and do something, and that kind of let me be a little more freewheeling and
Hmm.
not worry too much about the small stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think after you do it a while, it just, you become more comfortable with it. And the authenticity part of it, I think if it's the content that you're putting out there is like, you're passionate about it and you believe in it, and it's something that you are, really like educated on and well versed in. And I mean, you have all this lived experience and now
Right.
professional experience, and so I'm sure that comes across even when you get the jitters in the beginning. But I'm sure after a while, it becomes a lot easier. And I also talk about this with like all of my clients and a lot of companies that I come across, that especially in sort of the startup, early kind of startup days, and probably more so in FamTech even than maybe some other industries, the founder led like brand and having that founder front and center, where it's like more than you kind of see their picture and you see their bio on the website, and
Hmm.
maybe you see them post on LinkedIn every once in a while, but like really like seeing them and hearing them, and having a little bit more of a connection with them than you might from some other random company selling widgets or whatever. So that I
It's
think
true.
is a really important part of kind of the uh, maybe not even the goal in the early days, but it's really about just kind of establishing like trust and and a connection and credibility and all of that is like you're fast tracking a lot of that if you're putting out that kind of video. So I'm sure that
Yes,
that's part of it too.
it is, and that's part of our, I guess, core values is that we're authentically living this life, and I'm not gonna, tell you something that's to make it seem like it's easy when I know it
Yeah.
isn't. Right? And just a funny story on that is, I do these videos. They probably take 2 to 2.5 hours per video from start to finish to get it up there, right? So I can do maybe 2 a week. I haven't been doing that the last few weeks because there's been other priorities taken over. But I connected with someone connected with me on LinkedIn, and I talked with her yesterday. Hadn't met her before, and she, like, almost right off the bat, she said, "You talk exactly like you do in your videos." And I thought, what do you mean? Well, how else would I talk?
Yeah.
Right. But it was just sort of the conversational style that I had with her was exactly what I did in the video. And I thought, okay, well, you just gave me a big boost to say, yeah, it makes it worth it
Hmm.
that somebody's hearing the message. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. But it was just sort of very off the cuff and very early in the conversation. And I thought that's
Yeah.
a very interesting observation.
Yeah. No, I mean that kind of kudos to you to even pick up on that as being a a big like positive thing when it comes
Yeah.
to the videos, and then just like when you connect with people, because that is pretty important. You mentioned AI, ChatGPT. I'm just kind of curious. I it's just a topic I'm very interested in, and every founder that I talk to, I'm always curious. Like, what are some of the ways that you're using it? Either for probably like the obvious stuff, like little productivity hacks and kind of saving time, being more efficient. But and then have you also considered integrating AI in some form with either the product or something that you sort of deliver a way of kind of delivering value to like customers eventually? Is that something you think about?
So let me take the two parts of your question
Yeah.
there. So um, I've been using ChatGPT for probably 6 months in basically trying to train it into
Hmm.
my voice
Yeah.
and all the aspects around the pink book and what the topics are around, what the video should be. And it really is, I guess it's a productivity boost for sure. So it has learned what my voice is kind of like. It has learned my objectives and what I want to achieve, who the type of people I want to reach out to. So it's helped me a lot in getting that messaging crisp. And I use it every day. Like for writing the scripts for the videos, um, it helps. I just throw ideas out and it comes back with things, and then I change it. And it's always my voice,
Hmm.
but it helps me to get those thoughts out there, in seconds versus hours to try and do that. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And if I didn't have that, honestly, it would have changed how much I'm able to get out to people.
Hmm.
In terms of, is it going to be part of what Soaring Families offers? Well, what I can tell you is that I've partnered with a tech company in the U.S. and we're trying to build an AI assistant on front of the Pink Book. So rather than um, you taking the templates and either handwriting them or updating them on your laptop and then
Hmm.
printing them out or using them that way, is you actually have a conversation with this AI assistant. It's going to help you fill in the blanks. It's going to help you connect the dots, so that rather than using your laptop, you could just call up the app, have a conversation, and then you can print your pink book from there. And so it's more of a way to extract the information from the family caregiver to make it as simple and as easy as possible, because things happen, I mean, often there are updates that you have to do, meds change or routines
Hmm.
change, and rather than you have to go back in and manually update things, you just would tell this assistant, listen, we had a change in this medication, it's now being taken at this dosage at this time, and it does the rest for you. I mean, that would
Yeah.
again free up all kinds of time for people. And then it's the burden of having to remember all of that is taken away.
Yeah. Um, Now you've talked about AI. You've talked about potentially sort of an AI way of kind of removing friction, the kind of delivering value. You talked about some of the partnerships earlier. What
Mhm.
are some of the other things that you're just really excited about right now that is in the future? It could be maybe like a short term kind of thing that you're working on soon, or even what are you kind of excited about in the long term for everything that you're working on?
Well, I think I can see that whole AI assistant growing into something that becomes, across the board useful for people. And it's early days yet, and we're trying to, manage our expectations. And, it costs money to do this, so we're trying to find a way to do it, the most efficiently. I guess in the short term is that there are some organizations that are very interested in our frameworks and our experience of how we can do it to kind of help the service they deliver be that much more valuable. And so for me, it's not having to, add a whole bunch of people to the company. It's about leveraging their resources, empowering them to do it, giving them the knowledge, and sort of benefiting from that financially from that as well. And they benefit because now they have a value added service that they wouldn't have thought of before. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it'll take some time. Like I'm not naive to think that it's the first crack at it is going to be, 100% successful. And trying to start pilots with these organizations. Say, let's try it out. See, let's learn from it. Not invest too much time or money. See what comes out of it, and maybe it'll be great, and maybe we'll take it in a whole different direction because you'll learn something that you hadn't even anticipated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all a balancing act, right? I mean, you have to have the blinders on and be really ultra focused on the thing you're working on today.
Right.
But you also can't take your eye off of like the path ahead and stuff that's upcoming. Cause I always find that's like kind of the exciting stuff that sometimes keeps you going and really keeps the energy up when like the day-to-day stuff can kind of beat you down sometimes.
It's a grind, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of it being a grind, um, what advice would you give to someone who maybe has an idea for some kind of a business in famtech or the care economy, caregiving, or really any kind of a startup? What advice would you give them just based on your story, your path, what you've kind of overcome? I mean, you've talked about you had a little bit of the imposter syndrome, you've had the ups and downs, you've like it's all a grind and also balancing a full-time job, and caring for family and a startup is, I mean, that's a lot. What advice can you give to people maybe doing their own, some juggling of their own?
I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is, be believe in what you want to deliver, but don't be married to it, because it might change. And so the formula that we had, I thought this is a slam dunk. Everyone can use it, and yet it's still not being used by everybody, right? And
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of reasons. So you um, find, be flexible, that you need to kind of pivot and find a way to still serve, but in maybe ways you hadn't thought of. The second thing is, don't be afraid to fail, because you will. The Fail in the sense that, it might not be a total disaster, but it hasn't, caught on the way you thought, or you haven't made any money at it, or, but be prepared for that, and understand that it's not necessarily you failing personally. It's just you had incomplete information to start with, and maybe the world has changed, and now you just getting that feedback. Treat it as feedback, not as failure. And then the last thing, I guess, why I'm part of FamTech and a couple of other organizations, is that you can't do it all on your own, so don't even try. And it's in the care economy, it's all about collaboration. There are large organizations that have, pretty deep pockets that can do a lot of things, but they can't do everything. They can't do things that Soaring Families is doing. So don't worry too much about it, and just find a way to partner, collaborate, because that's going to teach you, and also find different markets and different audiences that you never even thought was out there.
Yeah, it's all good advice. Last quick question before I let you go. No, not really a question, but sort of giving you the space to kind of talk about if someone has listened to your story, they want to get in touch with you either because they're interested in what you're building, or potentially a partnership of some kind, or they're interested in the Pink Book or whatever it might be. Just want you to just kind of let people know how they can get in touch with you, or through your company.
Sure. The easiest way really is just email, because I check email like a lot, very often, and it's mike@soaringfamilies.com. So feel free to ping that email address about any question, and then we can go from there. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's under Mike George, not Soaring Families, but Soaring Families does have a page, but it's more under me personally. And then, I readily give out my cell number. And if they want to contact me that way, not many people are bold enough to do it, but I'm here to listen if you want. So I can give you that number, Dan, and you can leave that out there for people. But I'd love to talk that way too, or text or whatever. So it's really about just, let's start a conversation, see if there's some fit for both of us, and then, happy to help.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to include a lot of those links in the episode description, and then hopefully some more people can, get in touch with you on LinkedIn or on your website, and learn a little bit more about your story and what you're building. And I really appreciate it, Mike. I know we met kind of through, I think through FamTech and some other mutual connections. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just kind of staying in touch, and
for sure.
And hopefully this is just the first call to kind of do a little bit of deep dive in your story, and hopefully there be some more time for us to connect here in the future.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity, Dan, and it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.